As I said, I was born in Alexandria, Virginia. My dad was in the government. He was in the Central Intelligence Agency, so I never knew what he did. That was all classified, until he died. It was all classified. So that was kind of interesting. Although at school, when they asked what your father's employment was, they would put down U.S. government and location, Langley, Virginia. They didn't need to say CIA. They could say CIA, but everybody knew if they put down Langley, Virginia, they're in the agency. So that got kind of interesting. My dad had to do one tour overseas, which we did in Japan in 1952 to 54. So I was very young. I don't remember much about it, but we'll get into that some other time. Some interesting stories from that one. So mostly it's going to be all my stories. And I hope you enjoy it. I try to make it as humorous as I can, although there are one or two that are not. But that's the way life is. And I'm doing this so my family can see it, okay? And it concerns my father. And it's how this channel, vlog, got its name. As I said, my father was in the CIA, and he started in the CIA about 1946 to 1947 when the CIA was created, right at the beginning. And he's worked his way up from there. The period I'm talking about, he was high-level CIA, very high level. And he was a cigar smoker. He was also a colonel in the Army. And I was coming home from junior high school one day, and I went into a little corner store, and they had one of those wonderful display stands that teenage boys love with, fake vomit and cinnamon gum and whoopee cushions and hand buzzers, and a little round red tin of cigar loads. And if you've ever seen one, they're nasty little red things about the size of a grain of rice. And you stick them in, and when the fire gets to it, it explodes. Okay, whoopee, ha. I thought it would be funny. So my father always put his cigars out on the table the night before, and then he would pick them up in the morning. So I went out after everybody went to bed, and using a toothpick, I shoved a cigar load down into one of the cigars, thinking it'd be funny. And I was ready for it. He always came home at 5:30. I heard the car drive in at 4:30. It was a little surprising. The door opened, and somebody I hadn't really seen before walked in. It was Colonel Woodward. Head, shoulders squared, chin out, braced. He marched in. He did a parade turn and marched towards me. Full parade march. Got in front of me, put his head about there in front of me, and said in a voice I can't even begin to describe, "Don't you ever do that again." He was missing his eyebrows. His eyelashes were burned off or crisped. His hair was crisped, right in the front. He had brown holes and burn holes in his shirt and his tie. None on his coat, so I guess he wasn't wearing that. He glared in my eyes, and I was melting. I thought, oh, damn, this didn't work out. And he stood, braced, turned, and went upstairs. He did the worst thing I could have ever imagined. Never mentioned it again. And I was dying of curiosity, but knowing what he did, I realized that I couldn't ask. There's things you just didn't talk about. And so we had, it went away. And there was nothing else to it. That was it until he died. And he died in 1988, January. They had moved to Snippatuit Pond in Rochester, Massachusetts. And he died on the 13th of January. And that weekend we had the funeral and the memorial. And a bunch of his agency buddies came up for the funeral. And then we all went to my mother's house. And we sat down for a memorial, had a memorial, and we had snacks and all that sort of stuff. And during the memorial, at about 9 o'clock at night, I had this guy come over. He was a general. I knew he was a two-star general, and his name that I have is Wilkinson, but I don't know if that was correct. He came over to me and said, "Can you come outside for a minute?" And I said, "Sure." It's cold. It was 9 o'clock at night in January in Massachusetts. It's cold. And we went out, and he said, "Do you remember that cigar load you did to your father?" I said, "Oh, yeah." chuckled. He said, "What happened?" I told him nothing. I never knew what happened. And he said, "Well, he couldn't tell you, but he's gone now, and I can." He said it was in Dick Helm's office, director of the Central Intelligence Agency's office, when he lit that puppy. That's what the general said. And it went off. Everybody's hair was on fire. Their eyelashes, eyebrows were burning. The classified papers were going over, were on fire. It was bedlam as the fire system kicked in and sprinklers came on. And the general said it was the most excitement that the director's office had ever seen. And he said it became folklore within the agency about the day that somebody bombed the director's office. And I would love to know if that's true. If anybody out there who's looking at this knows, they can leave a comment or something. Let me know. But it was not folklore. It was real. And I did it. So I would love to hear from that one. So it was an interesting time. I have lots more to do on this that are going to happen over time as we do this. But I just wanted to do that. Now I want to tell you one of my stories. I've had many careers. I think I've had 6 or 7 different careers. I have an associate's degree in marine engineering and marine biology. I went to a tech school in Maine. And because of that, I was immediately hired by Texas Instruments Ecological Services to be a field tech. And because of my experience with that school I went to, we also had navigation and engineering. We had to do both. So I had engineering and I had navigation skills. So I was always put in charge of things. I was automatically made a crew leader. And in Massachusetts, we were working on the Connecticut River to do a pre-site selection for Northeast Utilities for twin nuclear power plants on the Connecticut River. Unbeknownst to everybody, they'd already selected the site, and they were just trying to confirm it. And what really set everything back was that they knew where the site was, and that exact site was where we found the second known population of short-nosed sturgeon in the United States, right at the intakes. Well, that was the end of that. They can't do that because it's a highly endangered species. I got off track here, but I was coming back from a sample run, and I was driving a Ford F-150 and towing about a 24-foot outboard boat, sample boat behind me. And we were coming up Route 9, headed west. And Route 9 back then, the woods came right down to the edge of the roadbed. There was no shoulders or anything. And we're trucking along about 50, 55. There was a flash of brown, and the windshield went opaque. The butt of the deer came in, and then the front of the deer came in and landed in our laps. We put a deer through the windshield at 55 miles an hour. The butt of the deer hit the guy sitting next to me in the face, and then a deer flopped down. I got hit by either, I think it was the rearview mirror, but I don't know. I don't know what I got hit by in the head, but I was pretty well dazed. I had a pretty good lump on my head. And I got the boat and truck pulled over to the side and managed to put the flashes on. And I'm sitting there. The other guys were getting out, pushing the deer off and getting out, but the engine's running. And I couldn't figure out how the deer is lying on the key. How do I turn the engine off? Because the deer's on the key. And I looked down, and the deer's hooves were right in my crotch, okay? And I realized that if this deer kicked, I ain't ever having kids, and I may not survive. And so I popped the clutch, and I just bailed out. And we ran over to the other side of the road. First vehicle coming down on scene was a school bus. And he had a CB radio, and he saw, the roof of the truck peeled back like a cantilever gotten into it. And the windshield was missing, and very impressive. And he called the police over, asking us how we were. The guy on the far end, on the left, he got glass in his eye. The guy, as I said, in the middle, got the butt of the deer in his face and had lots of glass cuts and some rather abusive jokes. So, bestiality, let's say. And I had been hit in the head. And so the police came up with their lights on. It was a local police chief or police car, and it had that red rotating bubble light on it. And it was a sheriff, and it was one of the typical, picture in your mind a country sheriff, big fat guy. And he waddled up to us and said, hit a deer, did you? Yep. Got away, did it? Nope. And he looked in the bed of the truck and said, where'd it go? And we pointed, and he went up and looked in the cab and said, oh my God, are you guys all right? There was a lot of blood from the guy sitting in the passenger side. His face cuts bleed like mad. So we went to the hospital and we got taken care of. And, the guy with the glass in his eye had to go for a procedure to remove all the glass. They released us to go back, and I had to drive the truck back to the site. Does not have a windshield. The wipers are flat on the dash, and it's raining. So I'm driving this truck, and I come up to a school bus where these kids are getting out, and just for kicks, I turned on the windshield wipers, and they went the broken glass on the dash. And the kids were looking at me like, are you out of your mind? So we got it back. But that's pretty much that story there. But, I have a lot of these where I call them my 9 live moments. And I have one more for you. One of my other careers was a environmental chemistry technician. Actually, I was in charge of a laboratory. And I was going up to a sampling site up in upstate Rhode Island. Yes, Rhode Island does have a north, even though it's small. In northern Rhode Island. And I was on Route 295 in the western part of Rhode Island. And 2 lanes. I was in the right lane. And we came up to a hill, and the highway broadened out to 3 lanes. And there was, I was still, now I'm in the middle lane. And I wasn't really paying attention. I should have been. And suddenly there was a bump, a thump, and my car pivoted 90 degrees into the front bumper of an 18-wheeler. And it was Peterbilt, because that name was right there in front of me. Chrome bumper. And I remember seeing my face. I discovered that with a death grip on the steering wheel, both hands on the brake, screaming, stop, stop, stop. Nothing really happens. It didn't really help. It was a concrete roadbed and had those expansion joints. So it was going like this over the expansion joints. And I realized that if it went over top of me, I'm going to be hamburger. So I laid down over the center console into the passenger seat, hoping I'd get a little protection there. I felt the truck accelerate, and then he backed off. And we slowed down, and we came to a stop. I do not remember how I did this, but somehow in one motion, I bailed out the passenger side. I have no memory of it, and I stood up, and it was a black driver who went very gray when he saw me, because he had no idea that I was there. Eyes wide, he jumped out of the cab. I'm sorry, I didn't know you were there. There was a state trooper a couple miles back from the truck and saw the smoke billowing out of the truck and figured the truck had locked a brake or something. And so he put on his lights and stopped behind the truck. When he saw me run into the median strip, he came bolting out of his police car and ran up to me, because he now realized something else is there. And he looked at the car, and he looked at me, and he looked at the damage. He said, "You're the luckiest son of a bitch I've ever met. You should be dead." Yeah, I should have been. They managed to get the truck, my car. By the way, it was a Hyundai Excel. If you look that up, it's a little tiny car. One of the first Hyundais sold in America. But made mostly out of aluminum foil. Very tiny and very light. They got it off, and they got it onto a truck and took it to a place to be fixed. All 4 wheels were burned off. The aluminum wheels were just melted right off. The outside one's right down about here, about that far. And all four tires were gone, and there was sheet metal damage on the driver's side. So they got it to a repair shop, and they fixed it. It didn't take them long to fix it. I didn't go get it. My boss did, and he came back and said, they were commenting about the accident because they'd heard what happened, and they said it was easy. It was easy to fix. They basically popped the metal back out because it was so thin. I don't think they even replaced any panels, and then replaced the tires, the wheels, and got all that done. And they said the hardest thing to clean up was the brown stains on the front seat, which I would not recommend that ride for an amusement park anywhere. It was terrifying. So another one I escaped. So, and I'm going to be telling a lot of stories like that. There's a lot of very interesting ones. I guess I'll do a teaser. Having yellow perch sperm fights, okay? Things like that were just, looking back, were amusing. And I will get to that. Don't worry. I'll tell you. But that's really all I got to say today. I want to keep them short, but thank you for viewing. Any comments you wish to do, I'd appreciate it. And I'll look for you for the next time. Thank you.